Hashtag they called her a gold digger in court until her real identity was revealed. Hashtag tag 11 Labs voice ready script, clean format. She sits at the left-hand table, alone. Not alone the way people are alone in an empty room. Alone the way a single candle is alone in a wind, burning, upright, improbably still, but surrounded on all sides by something that wants to extinguish it. Across the aisle, Chadwick Ashworth III has constructed a small empire of support. 2 high-powered attorneys in matching charcoal suits, a junior associate scribbling notes, a financial expert already arranged beside him, and his mother, Eleanor Ashworth, seated in the front gallery row directly behind him, close enough to pass him confidence like currency, her pale blue eyes moving across the room with proprietary satisfaction. Chadwick leans toward his lead attorney and murmurs something. Both men smile. They look at Serafina. Chadwick's smile widens, because the view from his side of the courtroom must look like victory already delivered. A woman. Alone. No legal team of consequence. No family flanking her. No fortress. Just a dove gray blazer and a fountain pen and a strand of pearls that his mother has already publicly called pretentious costuming for a woman who has nothing genuine to her name. The gallery murmurs. Journalists scribble. Chadwick's supporters settle in with the comfortable anticipation of people watching a predetermined outcome arrange itself into reality. Serafina does not look at any of them. She writes something in her folio. Caps her pen, looks straight ahead at the judge's bench. And somewhere behind those amber eyes, something ancient and unhurried is waiting. Warren Cole rises first. He buttons his jacket with the practiced precision of a man who performs authority for a living and has perfected the performance. He sweeps the room with his gaze the way a general surveys terrain he has already decided is his. Your Honor, he begins, his voice smooth and expensive, this case represents a straightforward matter of financial misrepresentation. My client, Mr. Chadwick Ashworth, entered a 6-year marriage in good faith. Good faith. The words land in the room with the weight of something calculated and rehearsed. 6 months of preparation have gone into the precise emotional architecture of those 2 words. Because good faith implies its opposite. Good faith implies that someone in this courtroom did not operate in it. And everyone's eyes move to Serafina. She does not shift in her seat. She does not reach for water. She simply writes a brief note in her folio and keeps her eyes on the judge.
Who has now discovered, Cole continues, his voice rising with comfortable theatrical momentum, that the woman he married misrepresented both her financial situation and her personal circumstances in order to secure a marriage that would grant her access to the Ashworth family's generational wealth, their business assets, their social standing. In short, Your Honor, my client was the victim of a calculated and sophisticated manipulation by a woman who arrived in his life with nothing, took everything she could carry, and now sits before this court demanding a settlement to which she has absolutely no legitimate claim.
And Serafina stands. She stands the way old trees stand, without hurry, without fanfare, simply and entirely vertical. Your Honor, I have prepared a full documented response to each of counsel's allegations. I'd like to begin with the financial misrepresentation claim, if the court would. Miss Vale Montgomery. Cole interrupts with smooth, practiced condescension. I'm sorry, is it Vale Montgomery, or is it simply Montgomery? Or perhaps neither of those is actually your legal name, given the inconsistencies in your personal history that we'll be presenting today. The gallery stirs. Serafina looks at Cole steadily. My name is Serafina Eloise Vale Montgomery. It has not changed. Cole smiles at his client. Interesting. The morning session builds like weather. One by one, Cole deploys his prepared humiliations. He calls Serafina's background murky and unverifiable. He describes her as someone who cultivated an air of refinement she did not come by honestly. He produces, with great theatrical ceremony, a series of photographs, Serafina at a modest apartment she lived in during graduate school, presented as evidence of fabricated social status. He produces testimony from two of Chadwick's associates, men who have dined at Chadwick's table and drunk his wine, describing Serafina as calculating, cold, always watching, never quite what she presented. Each word is a small stone thrown. Each stone lands. And through all of it, the photographs, the testimonies, the whispered conversations in the gallery that are not quite quiet enough, Serafina sits alone at her table and takes notes. No one brings her coffee. No hand rests on her shoulder in the corridor break. No reassuring face waits for her in the gallery. She walks to the water fountain alone. She reads her files alone. She stands in the corridor during recess, back straight, looking out a window at the city below with the particular stillness of someone who has decided that dignity does not require an audience. But the loneliness is total, and the room can see it. And the room is deciding, the way rooms always do, that visible aloneness is the same as visible weakness. It is not. But they do not know that yet. 6 weeks before this morning, Victor Vale stands at the head of the dining table. His silver-white hair catches the candlelight. His amber eyes, her eyes, are fixed on his daughter. "You are telling me," Victor says, very quietly, "that you intend to walk into that courtroom without us." Serafina sets down her wine glass. Yes, Serafina. Her brother Damien, his jaw a locked gate. They are going to destroy you publicly. They've been building this narrative for 6 months. Chadwick has every media contact his family has purchased over 3 generations telling a story about you. I know what story they're telling. Then let us walk in there and end it. No, the table goes quiet in the way that Vale family tables go quiet, not with discomfort, but with the gravity of a decision being made at altitude. Serafina looks at her father. Papa. The word is softer than anything else she has said. I need to understand what I am without you in the room. I need the court to see what they think I am, and then I need them to see the truth. In that order. Do you understand what I'm asking? Victor Vale regards his daughter for a long moment. The amber of his eyes is complex and old. I understand what you're building. Then trust me to build it. Because here is what Chadwick Ashworth does not know. What Warren Cole does not know. What Eleanor Ashworth, for all her social surveillance and vicious preparation, has somehow catastrophically failed to uncover. The Vale family is not a name that appears in the gossip columns. It does not appear on the social pages. It does not appear in the profiles of new money or established money or any category that people who perform wealth tend to curate. The Vale family appears, quietly and permanently, on the boards of institutions that predate most living memories. On the founding documents of 3 international charitable foundations. On the private client lists of the most significant banking institutions on 2 continents. In the personal correspondence, preserved, framed, historically significant, of 3 heads of state. Genevieve Margot Vale built the first chapter of this legacy in 1962 with a business decision so audacious that her male contemporaries had spent a decade insisting she could not make it. She made it. The wealth that resulted did not announce itself. That was the first rule Genevieve established and the one she enforced with absolute devotion. Real power is quiet. Loud power is insecure. She passed that rule to her son Victor. Victor passed it to his daughter Serafina, which is why Serafina spent 6 years as Chadwick Ashworth's wife and allowed him to believe, to truly believe, that her family was merely comfortable, educated, presentable, nothing remarkable. She had come to him as herself, a woman with a graduate degree in international art history, a quiet career in arts consultancy, a rented apartment, and a love for him that she now understands was the most expensive thing she ever gave away for free. Genevieve Vale sits by the window in her midnight blue silk, the diamond brooch catching early light. She holds her granddaughter's hand between both of hers. Your grandfather, she says, made enemies who underestimated him. They always regretted it in ways that lasted longer than they lived. She looks at Serafina. Her ancient amber eyes hold 60 years of undefeated history. You have my blood, my darling. All of it. Whatever that man has built against you in that courtroom, it is made of paper." She pauses. We are not paper. This is the architecture of what Serafina knows and what the courtroom does not. She did not come to this trial without ammunition. She came without visible ammunition. There is a profound and devastating difference. And somewhere, in a convoy of black vehicles moving through the city toward this courthouse, the truth of who Serafina Eloise Vale Montgomery actually is 23 minutes away. She caps her pen. And waits. Cole is at full momentum now. He paces before the judge's bench with the comfortable authority of a man who believes the geography of this room belongs to him. What we have established this morning, Your Honor, is a pattern. He holds up one finger, a pattern of misrepresentation. A second finger, a pattern of calculated positioning. A third finger, and a pattern of manufactured identity designed to extract maximum financial benefit from my client's family legacy. From the gallery, Eleanor Ashworth watches her son's legal proxy perform with the quiet pride of an art collector observing a commissioned piece exceeding expectations. Chadwick himself has adopted the posture of dignified victimhood with the skill of a man who has practiced it in mirrors. His hands are folded on the table. His expression is pained but composed. We will demonstrate. Cole continues, turning briefly toward Serafina, with a gesture that manages to be simultaneously dismissive and theatrical, that Miss Vale Montgomery has no significant independent assets, no verifiable family connections of any consequence, and no legitimate claim to. From the back of the courtroom, the large oak doors shift. Not open. Just shift. A breath. A pressure change. Cole continues without noticing. Serafina's fountain pen pauses above her notepad. Just for a beat. Then she writes again. A court attendant near the back door turns his head slightly toward the corridor outside. He frowns. He looks at someone beside him. He leans forward. Cole is still speaking. His voice is rolling and assured, carrying each prepared sentence to its prepared destination. He describes Serafina's graduate thesis as a prop. He describes her consultancy career as a performance designed to suggest intellectual legitimacy. He is thorough. He is merciless. He is absolutely convinced this room is his. The oak doors breathe again. Outside, unseen by the courtroom but felt, the way pressure is felt before a storm, a convoy of 3 black vehicles has pulled to the curb of the courthouse steps. The doors of the first vehicle open. And it is our position, Cole concludes, turning to face the judge with great ceremony, that this court should see clearly what stands before it. A woman without resources. Without support. Without legitimate claim, Serafina's head tilts, almost imperceptibly, toward the doors at the back of the room. The court attendant near the oak doors has stepped fully into the corridor now. He returns. His face has changed. He bends toward the bailiff. The bailiff's eyes widen. They exchange 2 words. No one in the courtroom catches them. But the doors, the grand, heavy, polished mahogany doors, have stopped breathing. They are about to open. The break is 20 minutes. Chadwick's team retreats to a conference room equipped with espresso and printed summaries and the comfortable energy of people managing a foregone conclusion. Eleanor Ashworth is shown inside with the deference that expensive attorneys show to the people who write their checks. The door closes. Serafina stands at the end of the corridor near the tall window, alone. Below her, through the glass, the city moves with its indifferent momentum, taxis and pedestrians and the ordinary ongoing machinery of lives that have nothing to do with this room, this day, this quiet demolition being conducted in mahogany and morning light. She has her phone in her hand. She does not make a call. She reads a text message. 1 single line. We are 2 minutes away. Papa. She closes the message. She does not reply. She puts the phone in her jacket pocket and looks back out at the city. A court journalist approaches her from the corridor. Miss Vale Montgomery? I'm covering today's proceedings for the Herald. Do you have any comment on the Ashworth team's characterizations of your background? Several outlets are running the narrative that I'm sorry, I have to ask, that you fabricated your personal history to access the Ashworth family wealth. A long pause. Serafina does not look at the journalist immediately. She finishes her gaze out the window, then turns. She regards him with those amber eyes, quiet, not unkind, and carrying something the young journalist cannot quite name. I have no comment at this time, she says. The story is already gaining traction online. If you don't offer a counter-narrative, what is your name? He blinks. Marcus. Marcus Chen. Marcus. She holds his gaze steadily. In approximately 15 minutes, you will not need a counter-narrative from me. You will have a story considerably more interesting than the one you walked into this building expecting to write. A pause. I would keep your recorder on. He stares at her. She walks back toward the courtroom doors. She pauses with her hand on the door handle. The corridor is empty behind her. The courtroom beyond the door holds everything that has been said about her today, every stone thrown, every characterization built, every careful brick of her public demolition. She is alone in this corridor. For the last time. She pushes open the door and walks back to her table. She sits. She opens her folio. She uncaps her pen. She writes one final note to herself, 3 words, and then she folds her hands. And she waits. The room has resettled after recess. Warren Cole is at the podium with his next series of exhibits prepared. The judge reviews her notes. Chadwick sits with renewed confidence. The break has refreshed him, topped him up with espresso and attorney reassurance, and he looks at Serafina's lone seat with something dangerously close to open contempt. Your Honor, the defense would like to introduce Exhibit 47, the oak doors open. The massive, polished mahogany courtroom doors, the grand ceremonial doors at the back of the room, do not creak. They do not bang. They swing open with the slow, inexorable gravity of something that has decided to happen and cannot be stopped. Every head in the courtroom turns. First through the doors, Damian Vale. He fills the doorframe the way men of genuine physical authority fill spaces, not aggressively, but completely. Dark hair, set jaw, amber eyes that are the absolute mirror of his sister's. He walks with the unhurried certainty of someone who has been outside this door for 20 minutes, who has waited for exactly the right moment because the right moment was the only moment worth choosing. He walks down the center aisle. He does not look at Chadwick Ashworth. He looks at his sister. And when Serafina sees him, when those amber eyes find his amber eyes across the length of the courtroom, something in her face changes. Not breaks. Not crumbles. Changes. The way stone changes when sunlight finds it after a long winter. A warming, barely visible to anyone not watching closely enough. Second through the doors, Victor Augustin Vale. The room has already fallen quiet for Damian's entrance. For Victor, it does something different. The room does not merely go quiet. The room holds its breath. Because Victor Vale, at 6'3", in his perfectly cut charcoal 3-piece suit, silver white hair immaculate, amber eyes moving across the courtroom with the measured authority of a man who has conducted business in rooms infinitely more consequential than this one, Victor Vale does not walk into rooms so much as reorder them. The air around him seems to rearrange itself. The light seems to acknowledge him. He moves down the aisle with his hands clasped behind his back. He does not hurry. He passes the gallery row where Eleanor Ashworth sits, and he does not look at her, which is somehow more devastating than if he had. He passes Chadwick's table. And Chadwick, who has spent the last 6 months believing he dismantled a woman who had no one, turns his head to track this man's movement with the dawning expression of someone who has just heard a sound in a room that was supposed to be empty. Victor arrives behind his daughter's table. He places one large hand on her shoulder. One hand. And in that single gesture, unhurried, undemonstrative, absolute, 6 months of Chadwick Ashworth's constructed narrative begins to structurally fail. Serafina does not turn around. She places her own hand briefly over her father's. One beat. Then she straightens, straighter than before, taller. Not because his presence makes her different, but because his presence makes visible what was always true. Warren Cole has stopped speaking. He is standing at the podium with Exhibit 47 still in his hand, and his face has lost approximately 20% of its performance confidence. He looks at his client. Chadwick is staring at Victor Vale with an expression that is transitioning, visibly, publicly, without the grace of concealment, from contempt to confusion to the first cold finger of dread. "Who," he begins, in a whisper to his attorney, "is that?" Cole finishes, equally quiet, and equally without an answer. And then, third through the doors, Genevieve Margoval. The courtroom, which has already been restructured once by Damien and again by Victor, does not know what to do with Genevieve. Because Genevieve Vale, at 87 years old and 5'4", should not, by the ordinary mathematics of presence, command what she commands. And yet, she appears in the doorway in her midnight blue silk. The Diamond Vale family crest brooch catches the afternoon light from the corridor behind her and throws a brief, blinding constellation across the courtroom ceiling. She moves slowly. Her carved oak cane touches the aisle floor with each step. Tap, step, tap, step. A rhythm that the room unconsciously arranges itself around, the way water arranges itself around stone. Her white hair is perfectly coiled. Her face is lined and magnificent and arranged in an expression that could most accurately be described as the composed satisfaction of someone who has been waiting 87 years to walk into exactly this room for exactly this reason. Her amber eyes, the original, the source, the first pair from which all the others were cast, find her granddaughter. And Genevieve Vale smiles. Not a large smile. Not a theatrical smile. A small, private, ancient smile. The smile of a woman who built something 60 years ago and is now watching it stand exactly as it was built to stand. The gallery has forgotten decorum entirely. There are audible sounds, not words, not gasps exactly, but the involuntary acoustic evidence of an entire room updating its understanding of reality. The young journalist Marcus Chen at the back of the gallery, his recorder is on. Exactly as he was instructed. Eleanor Ashworth in the front gallery row has gone the color of cold wax. Her perfectly maintained propriety is holding, but barely, and beneath it something is shifting like ground before an earthquake. She turns to look at her son with an expression that is the most honest thing she has worn all day. Pure alarm. Chadwick Ashworth is white. Not pale, white. The kind of color that happens when blood removes itself from a face, not gradually but all at once, in a sudden reallocation of resources, as if the body has decided that the face is no longer a priority. His jaw has loosened from its performed composure. His gray eyes, moving from Damien to Victor to Genevieve, are doing something they have not done once all day. Calculating with fear instead of confidence. Genevieve reaches the front of the courtroom. She takes the seat immediately behind Serafina, directly beside her son Victor. She reaches forward and places her small, impeccably ringed hand against the back of Serafina's neck. The touch of a grandmother, of a dynasty, of 60 years of unbroken legacy, offering itself as infrastructure to a woman who was never, not for a single day of her life, without its foundation. Serafina's eyes close. For one breath. One breath. Then open. The judge sets down her pen and surveys the room. "I believe," she says, carefully, "we should allow counsel a moment to re-establish the order of proceedings." Cole clears his throat. "Your Honor, yes." "A moment, please." He leans toward Chadwick. He whispers urgently. Chadwick does not respond. He is looking at Serafina. Serafina, who has turned slightly in her chair to meet her grandmother's eyes, who has received something in that look, some confirmation, some inheritance, some reckoning delivered in silence, and who now turns back to face the front of the courtroom. She uncaps her pen. She writes. She looks exactly the same as she has looked all day. Composed, straight-spined, amber-eyed, absolutely still. The difference is that now the room knows why. The difference is that now Chadwick knows why. And the avalanche, which has been building since the moment those oak doors breathed, has begun. The room has reassembled around its new reality. Warren Cole is still at the podium, but he is a different man than the one who began this morning. He is a performer who has walked on stage to discover that the theater is not the theater he rehearsed in, that the set has changed, the audience is different, and someone has rewritten the play. Victor Vale speaks, not from the witness stand, not with permission sought, simply, quietly, leaning forward from his seat behind his daughter and addressing the judge directly, with the particular confidence of a man who understands instinctively which rooms require his deference and which rooms require something else entirely. Your Honor, my name is Victor Augustin Vale. I am Serafina's father. I have been asked by my daughter to remain an observer unless directly necessary. I believe, however, that certain representations made in this courtroom today regarding my family's identity and standing require correction before proceedings continue. The judge looks at him. Mr. Vale, you are not counsel, I am aware. A pause. My daughter's counsel will address these matters formally, Your Honor. I simply wanted to be present so that the record reflects, in terms that cannot be misunderstood, that Serafina Vale Montgomery has never once in her life been without significant family support, connection, or resource. The characterization that she is a woman who arrived in Mr. Ashworth's life with nothing, a pause of extraordinary precision, is not merely incorrect, it is almost impressively incorrect. Warren Cole is on his feet. Your Honor. Sit down, counsel. And there is something in the judge's voice that was not there this morning. Cole sits, because his legal team, in the recess following the Vale family's arrival, made 3 urgent phone calls. The first to a research associate. The second to a financial intelligence firm. The third, the one that has made Warren Cole's jaw tight and his color poor, to a senior partner at their own firm who knows, as it turns out, exactly who the Vale family is. That conversation lasted 4 minutes. The senior partner used 2 phrases: catastrophic error and get out now if you can. Chadwick is leaning toward Cole. His voice is low, urgent, stripped of every layer of performance. The dignified victimhood is gone. The polished contempt is gone. What remains is something raw and frightened and very small. Who are they? Cole answers in 2 sentences. The first sentence makes Chadwick's hands flatten on the table. The second sentence makes him close his eyes. He opens them. He looks at Serafina. She is not looking at him. In the gallery, Eleanor Ashworth is very still. She is running the calculations that only the most socially sophisticated people can run in real time, the calculation of consequences, of what this means, of what it means that her son spent 6 years married to a Vale, of what it means that she personally, publicly, with great theatrical commitment, called this woman a gold digger, of what it means that the transcript of today's proceedings will exist. Permanently. Her pale blue eyes move from the courtroom to her son. For the first time since Serafina has known her, Eleanor Ashworth looks afraid. And Chadwick who believed he had power here, who believed he had built a sufficient fortress of legal resource and social capital and prepared narrative to reduce his wife to rubble in a courtroom, Chadwick looks at his grandmother in law's ancient amber eyes, watching him from behind Serafina's shoulder. Genevieve Vale holds his gaze. She does not blink, She does not change her expression. She simply looks at him the way time looks at things it is about to outlast. And Chadwick Ashworth, in his bespoke navy suit with his gold cufflinks and his purchased confidence, understands at last what this day actually is. It is not his victory. It has never been his victory. The settlement is reached before the sun sets. Serafina descends the courthouse steps between her father and her brother, her grandmother's hand resting in the crook of her elbow. The late afternoon light catches all of them, 3 generations of Vale, descending stone steps with a particular unhurry of people who have never once needed to run. Serafina is not smiling triumphantly. She is not performing victory for anyone watching. She simply looks, for the first time in what has clearly been a very long time, held, supported, surrounded, whole. Behind them, through the courthouse glass, Chadwick Ashworth and his diminished legal team are visible, small figures in an emptying room, packing documents that no longer carry their original weight. Eleanor Ashworth exits a side door. Alone. No cameras follow her. That evening, the dining table is set with candles. Genevieve sits at the head. Victor at her right. Damien across from his sister. Serafina at the center, not the center of performance, but the center of belonging, which is a different and more sustaining thing entirely. She lifts her wineglass. She looks at each of them. "You waited," she says. "I asked you to wait." And you waited. Victor holds her gaze across the table. "You asked us to trust you. We trust you. Those are not separate things." Genevieve sets down her glass. "The most dangerous people in any room," she says, "are not the ones who announce their power. They are the ones who wait." A pause. They waited 6 months. We waited 1 day. She looks at her granddaughter. We won. He called her a woman with nothing. He was standing next to the daughter of a Vale and could not see what she was because she had chosen not to show him. Never mistake someone's quietness for emptiness. Never mistake their aloneness for abandonment. The most powerful support systems are not always the most visible ones. And the most dangerous thing you can do to someone who comes from depth is underestimate the depth. Now tell me, friends, have you ever been underestimated because people didn't know who was standing behind you? At which moment did you feel the most powerful shift? When the father entered, when the grandmother appeared, or when Chadwick finally understood what he had done? And if you were Serafina, would you have revealed your family immediately, or would you have waited, just like she did? Leave your answers in the comments. Every single one of them matters. And if this story moved you, if you have ever stood alone in a room while someone tried to rewrite who you are, then subscribe to Karma's Heiress. New episodes every week. Hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Because some people's roots run deeper than any storm that tries to uproot them.